Hey, Hoshi here. The one and only Sunday is finally getting a rerun, this time right before the big Elation meta, with Yao Guang and Spaxi on the horizon. That makes this the perfect moment to revisit Sunday, updated with everything we now know about the version 3.x meta. A lot has changed since his original release, and with the current meta direction, it's clear that how we build and use Sunday needs to be reevaluated. So without further delay, let's jump straight into it. So, as most of you already know, Sunday is an imaginary harmony character. He is, once again, a support unit, specifically designed for hypercarry DPS teams. Every part of his kit is focused on buffing a single DPS, allowing that DPS to attack more frequently and hit harder. Originally, Sunday was built around the summon meta, or what later became known as Remembrance. But we already know how that turned out, so let's not dwell too much on that topic. Even now, Sunday is still usable with both summon DPS and standard hypercarry DPS. That said, summon DPS teams remain more optimized for Sunday compared to traditional hypercarry setups. As for leveling priorities, you can completely ignore Sunday's basic attack. Instead, focus on his talent, skill, and ultimate, all with the same priority. Yes, equal priority. That part of his build has not changed. Now let's talk about Sunday's skill. This is the bread and butter of his entire kit. At its core, this ability advances one target forward by 100%, along with their summon or memo sprite, with the exception of harmony characters. On top of that, the skill increases the advanced character's damage by 30%. And if that character has a summon, they gain an additional 50% damage bonus. That's a massive increase. Because of this, Sunday's skill works well for both hypercarry DPS and summon DPS, but you can clearly see why it leans much more heavily towards summon-based DPS. That extra 50% damage boost applies to both the DPS and their summon, which is no joke. There's one more important detail here. If the advanced character is in the beatified state, a state granted by Sunday's ultimate, this skill will also refund one skill point every time it's used. And that skill point refund plays a huge role in how Sunday's rotations and team economy function. Since we're already talking about beatified, let's move on to Sunday's ultimate. This is a very universal ultimate. It targets a single character and applies several powerful buffs all at once. The first and most important effect is that it grants the beatified status to the target. As we mentioned earlier, this works directly in tandem with Sunday's skill. Every time Sunday uses his skill on a beatified target, he refunds one skill point. Because the skill costs 1 SP to use and immediately refunds 1 SP, this effectively makes Sunday's skill cost 0 SP while beatified is active. Next, this ultimate also regenerates 20% of the target's energy. This is a very significant amount and can be compared to Huohuo's energy regeneration. It's also worth noting that, at the moment, only Huohuo, Tingyun, and Sunday provide targeted energy regeneration. That alone makes this part of Sunday's kit quite special, especially if your DPS benefits heavily from faster ultimate uptime. On top of that, the ultimate grants the target 30% of Sunday's critical damage, plus an additional flat 12%. For example, if Sunday has 200% critical damage, this translates to roughly 72% critical damage for the target, which is a massive boost. All things considered, even in the late version 3.x environment, Sunday's ultimate remains a very strong and relevant ability to have in a support kit. And let's not forget about Sunday's talent. It's actually very simple. Every time you use Sunday's skill on a target, it increases that target's critical rate by 20%. So on top of the massive critical damage buffs we talked about earlier, Sunday also provides a significant critical rate boost, and 20% is no small amount. If you're aiming for a perfect 100% critical rate, this talent makes your DPS's life much easier. You only need to build 80% critical rate on your DPS, and Sunday's skill will handle the rest. This makes Sunday especially comfortable to use, since it relaxes stat requirements while still delivering strong damage amplification. As if the damage buffs from his skill, ultimate, and talent weren't already enough, Sunday's technique pushes it even further by granting an additional 50% damage bonus for 2 turns. While this buff doesn't last very long, especially for characters that take multiple actions per cycle, it's still a very nice extra burst of damage to have, particularly at the start of a fight. Overall, it's a solid bonus that complements Sunday's kit and helps your DPS hit even harder when it matters most. Think it's over? Wrong, it's not. All of Sunday's traces are extremely good, and they add even more value to his kit. Starting with Sunday's A2 trace. If the energy regenerated by his ultimate is less than 20, the target will instead regenerate 40 energy. This effectively sets a minimum energy regeneration of 40, which is honestly insane. In theory, that's even higher than Huohuo's energy regeneration in the worst case scenario. But that's not all. Sunday's A4 trace regenerates 25 energy for Sunday at the start of battle, giving him much faster access to his ultimate. Depending on turn order and enemy speed, you can often use Sunday's ultimate as soon as he takes his first turn. And finally, Sunday's A6 trace adds yet another layer of utility. Every time Sunday uses his skill, it dispels one debuff from the target. So now, Sunday's skill doesn't just advance forward and buff damage, it also provides debuff cleansing. With these traces taken into account, Sunday's overall kit becomes far more versatile and powerful than it might initially appear. So let's sum everything up. Before even considering his Lightcone, Sunday's kit provides 100% advance forward along with a one-time debuff cleanse, 30% to 80% damage dealt buff for 2 turns, up to 72% critical damage for 3 turns, assuming Sunday has 200% crit damage, energy regeneration with 40 energy guaranteed at minimum, 20% critical rate for 3 turns, an additional 50% damage buff for 2 turns from his technique, skill point neutral gameplay at minimum, even without Sunday's signature Lightcone. Taken together, this is, once again, one of the strongest buff packages a hypercarry support can offer. In terms of raw damage amplification, Sunday easily rivals, and in many cases surpasses, Bronya, and even Sparkle before her buffs. It's safe to say that Sunday is simply a better Bronya or Sparkle when it comes to buffing a single hypercarry DPS. On top of that, his gameplay is extremely simple. You use ultimate on your DPS, then use skill, and let your DPS do the rest. It's straightforward, intuitive, and very hard to mess up. Because of this, you really can't go wrong with Sunday. He's just that easy and comfortable to use. For speed tuning, there are 2 main ways to build Sunday: -1 speed Sunday or hyperspeed Sunday. For a -1 speed setup, you should aim for at least 134 speed on Sunday. Personally, I strongly prefer this option because it's much easier to build. Sunday has a very low base speed, which makes hitting hyperspeed thresholds quite difficult. If you want to go for hyperspeed Sunday, you'll need to aim for at least 160 speed or higher. Ideally, 180 speed or more would be the best case scenario. However, given how low Sunday's base speed is, reaching that level is extremely difficult. Realistically, around 160 speed is what most players can achieve. In the end, you should pick the option that best fits your playstyle and team setup. Since I mainly use Sunday with Phanon and Saridra, I personally prefer the -1 speed build much more. Next, let's talk about Sunday's Eidolons. As of version 3.8, not much has changed. Sunday is still very strong, arguably even better at higher Eidolon levels, but Eidolon 0 is already more than good enough. That said, if you're really considering pulling for his Eidolons, let's go through them one by one. Let's start with Eidolon 1. At E1, Sunday's skill allows the target to ignore 16% of the enemy's defense, while the target's summon ignores an additional 40% defense. This Eidolon is especially strong in Phanon teams, particularly when combined with Saridra E1 and Ruanmei E1, where you can theoretically reach up to 90% defense ignore. I can safely say that E1 is the best stopping point if you want to meaningfully upgrade Sunday's buffing potential. Moving on to Eidolon 2. E2 further enhances Sunday's ultimate, but only on its first use. It recovers 2 skill points and provides an additional 30% damage buff. While this is not as impactful as E1, it does have value in highly min-maxed zero-cycle setups, where constant skill usage across all characters is required. In those scenarios, the extra skill points can make a noticeable difference. For Eidolons 3 and 5, these are standard upgrades that simply increase the levels of skill, ultimate, talent, and basic attack. Nothing particularly special here. At Eidolon 4, Sunday regenerates 8 energy every time he takes a turn. This isn't game-changing, but it does make his ultimate generation more consistent and can theoretically enable a 2-turn ultimate rotation. Finally, we have Eidolon 6. At E6, the critical rate buff from Sunday's talent becomes stackable up to 3 times. Any excess critical rate above 100% is then converted into critical damage at a 2-to-1 ratio. For example, if your DPS has 40% excess crit rate, that gets converted into 80% critical damage. So, to sum it all up, for me personally, if you're going for Sunday's Eidolons, E1 is the sweet spot. It offers the biggest power increase for the least investment. You don't need E2 or beyond unless you're a whale, or you really enjoy pushing extreme min-max scenarios. And remember, money is limited, so please gacha wisely. Since Sunday is a Harmony character, he naturally has a lot of Lightcone options. The best option, without question, is Sunday's signature Lightcone. This Lightcone allows Sunday to reliably use his ultimate on turn 1, and it also enables a consistent 3-turn ultimate rotation. And that's just from the energy side of things. On top of that, it further buffs the target of Sunday's skill by 45% damage dealt. When you stack that together with everything else in his kit, the synergy is honestly insane. But it doesn't stop there. This Lightcone also allows Sunday to function as a skill point positive support. After every 2 instances of skill or ultimate used on the same ally, the wearer recovers 1 skill point. Taken as a whole, this Lightcone truly elevates Sunday to another level. That said, don't worry if you don't have it. Bronya's signature Lightcone, but the battle isn't over, works as an excellent replacement. If you don't have that either, the fully free-to-play option, Past and Future, is also viable, offering a similar buffing effect. And of course, we can't forget one of the best Lightcones in the game, Dance, Dance, Dance. It's usable in almost any situation, and when it comes to zero-cycling Memory of Chaos, very few Lightcones can compete with it. From a general purpose perspective, Sunday's E1 only adds one thing. It allows the target of Sunday's skill to ignore 16% of the enemy's defense. That's it. Now compare that to Sunday's signature Lightcone. The Lightcone provides a 45% damage buff, makes Sunday's ultimate rotation much smoother, and even turns him into a skill point positive support. Because of that, it's honestly a no-brainer. Between E1 and the signature Lightcone, you should always prioritize the Lightcone first. For Relic and Plannar sets, I'm really only going to recommend 2 setups because these are the only 2 playstyles that work well for Sunday in the current meta. The first playstyle uses 4-piece Secretos with 2-piece Lushaka. This is, by far, the best setup for maximizing Sunday's damage buffing potential. It's admittedly somewhat difficult to reach hyperspeed with this set, but since I personally prefer running -1 speed Sunday, this setup works perfectly for me. The second playstyle is for players who enjoy speed manipulation. Here, 4-piece Eagle with 2-piece Von Whack is the best option. With this setup, you aim for as much speed as possible, allowing Sunday to potentially take 3 to 4 turns in a single cycle. That said, this is a heavy min-maxing setup, so use it with caution. I strongly recommend this build only if you have Dance 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 at S5. If your DDD is below S5, I'd advise sticking with 4-piece Secretos and 2-piece Lushaka instead. So keep that in mind when choosing your build. With all of that said, the target stats you want for Sunday are at least 200% critical damage at minimum. His speed should then be adjusted depending on whether you're running a hyperspeed or -1 speed setup. Once those 2 stats are taken care of, you can focus on other survivability stats, HP being the preferred option. For main stats, you should almost always run a crit damage body, HP planar sphere, and an energy regeneration rate rope on Sunday. If you hit these benchmarks, Sunday will perform exactly the way his kit is designed to. Now let's talk about the juicy part, Sunday teams. After Dan Hung, PT, was released, you could simply pair him with Sunday, and then slot in any hypercarry DPS. That trio alone already works extremely well. For the remaining slot, you have several strong options, Tribby, Robin, or the free-to-play option Ruan Mei. All of them are perfectly viable. That said, if we want to be more specific, the best teams for Sunday are built around hypercarry Phanon or hypercarry Anaxa. For a Phanon plus Sunday team, you ideally want E1 Ceridra. From there, the last slot can be filled by Tribby, Ruan Mei, Robin, Remembrance MC, Bronya, or Sparkle. The key point here is E1 Ceridra. Without it, your team options become much more limited. Still, you can mix and match among the supports I mentioned, depending on what you have. Before Ceridra was released, the team I personally ran was Phanon, Sunday, Bronya, and Robin, and it worked extremely well. Outside of Phanon, Sunday can still be paired with almost any hypercarry DPS. Just remember this simple rule. If you want to run a sustainless team, Phanon should be your first choice. If you don't have Phanon and want a safer option, Pair Sunday with Dan Hung, PT, use any hypercarry DPS, and add one more support such as Robin, Tribby, Remembrance MC, or similar units. That setup will carry you comfortably. It would be an exaggeration to say that Sunday is completely not worth pulling, and honestly, people would probably be mad at me if I said that. That said, with a new meta just around the corner, things have changed. Sunday has absolutely proven himself as a meta support in the past, but in the current state of the game, he's simply no longer worth the investment for most players. The best Remembrance character that was practically designed for Sunday, Aglaia, is no longer at the top of the meta. Phanon? He doesn't really need Sunday anymore now that Cyrene exists. Caster Ice? Sunday is outright anti-synergistic with her. I'm not saying that Sunday is unusable. He's still perfectly playable in today's meta, and he still does exactly what his kit was designed to do. The problem is that the direction of the meta has moved on, and Sunday's kit simply doesn't fit that direction anymore. I've already explained this in detail in my previous video on why Sunday's kit is becoming outdated, so I won't repeat everything here. So once again, for me personally, Sunday is not worth pulling right now. If you're limited on resources or just starting your account, I strongly recommend skipping him. Your resources would be much better spent on the upcoming Elation characters, Yaoguang and Sparksy. Building toward a full Elation team will give you far more long-term value than investing in Sunday at this point. Sunday is good, no doubt about that. He's just no longer the optimal solution with all the newer supports entering the game. So that's pretty much everything for today's video. What do you think about Sunday? Would you pull for him during his rerun? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!